And good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are continuing our study of Israel's feast days. And I've been focusing on showing you that the last three of Israel's feast days, the Feast of Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Yom Kippur, and the Feast of Sukkot, and we will even discuss Shemini Atzerat at a later time. But nonetheless, of showing that in the New Testament, and this is really, really critical, in the New Testament, the writers tell us that those feast days, the cultic world of Israel, as a matter of fact, according to Hebrews 9 and 10, those events, those practices were shadows of the good things that were about to come. In Hebrews 9, after describing the practices of the high priest on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, of how the high priest killed the sacrifice, entered into the most holy place, and then returned again to bring salvation, the writer says Christ appeared at the end of the age to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. He entered into the presence, into the most holy place there to appear on our behalf, he said, and to those who eagerly look for him, he will appear again a second time apart from sin for salvation. For, chapter 10, verse 1, the law, that's the Old Covenant law, that's the mandates of that temple practice there, that's the temple worship, that's the Day of Atonement, for the law having a shadow of good things to come. Well, the law having, present active indicative, a shadow of the good things that were about to come, mellow, just like in Colossians chapter 2. And so the New Testament writers are very clear that those last three feast days, the new moons, the feast days, the Sabbaths, were, when they wrote 2,000 years ago, they were shadows of the good things that, number one, had not yet arrived, they had not yet been fulfilled, but they were about to be fulfilled. And that means that from Pentecost onward, the Pentecost being the last of the first four feast days, there was a time of waiting until the judgment, Rosh Hashanah. And that period of time was called the time of waiting for the judgment. And that's what we find on the pages of the New Testament. The New Testament, ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget, was written by Jews to Jews about Jewish things, the fulfillment of which was necessary to bring salvation to the world. That's so critical to keep in mind. It was only right and proper, therefore, that the New Testament writers, writing after Pentecost, were anticipating the fulfillment of the last three feast days. And that's precisely what we find. So over the last couple of videos, I've shared with you that in the New Testament, and specifically in Revelation, which has been our focus last couple of videos, the Father, who knew the day and the hour of the judgment, was revealing to the Son to show to the churches things which must shortly come to pass. At Revelation 1, verse 1, Revelation 1, verse 3, the time has arrived. Now, let me very quickly go back to Revelation chapter 14, 6, and 7. The Father informed Jesus to tell the churches, and John saw the vision. I saw a great angel flying through the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to proclaim and to preach to every kindred, nation, tongue, and tribe, saying, Babylon is fallen, Babylon the Great is fallen, for the hour of her judgment has come. Now, folks, that has come is from the Greek word eilphein, and it's an aorist active indicative. In other words, there's a point of time in which it was initiated. That point of time is in the past, but now it's here. All right? The aorist active indicative doesn't simply say, oh, well, it's way back then, or it was back then at any point of time. It carries with it the idea of then and now. Then and now. But that also means at one point of time, that judgment was not near. It had not arrived. It was not present. But it had now come present and was present. And it's the Father who said so. The Father who knew the day and the hour said so. And so once again, let me say this as kindly as possible. Those who seek to detract from, mitigate, and deny the temporal imminence of the judgment in Revelation are simply abusing the text. They're not only abusing the text, they're abusing linguistics, and they're abusing the context. It's a perversion. Strong word, but it's a perversion. Okay. Now, back to Revelation chapter 1, verse 3. After saying in Revelation 1, verse 1, these things must shortly come to pass, not rapidly versus imminent. And by the way, we're going to continue and we'll conclude our study of taxei. See, I guess now that will be next week. But there are a few passages that we have not examined that we will, because it's very important for us to conclude that and to show you how taxei is used throughout the New Testament. But for the present moment, for the last 3 videos, I've wanted to impress upon us how not only taxei, but the fact that it was the Father who was saying that the time had arrived. The Father who knew the day and the hour. And now in Revelation chapter 1 verse 3, we're being told by the Father, the time, the kairos, the divinely appointed time had arrived. Now that's in the perfect tense, ladies and gentlemen. What was once not there, okay? Meaning that those who argue, oh, God's always around us. The time is always here. Jesus' presence is always around us. And so they appeal to Psalms 137, I think it is. Am I not a God at hand? Says the Lord. Well, pretty clearly in that text, God is speaking spatially. He is not talking about his parousia. He is not talking about his erchomai, his coming. He is giving assurance that he is a God spatially that is always with us. But that's radically different from announcing that his coming in judgment, his erchomai, or his epiphany even, or his apocalypsis in judgment was at hand. And thus it becomes an illegitimate totality transfer when people appeal to Psalms 137, and again, I think that's the text, and they say, well, you see, Psalms 137, that becomes the singular controlling text to control all other texts. What kind of hermeneutic is this anyway? Where do these people get the right, the authority, and the justification for saying, well, you see, this text controls all texts that speak of the coming of the Lord being at hand? That's utterly ridiculous. Argumentum ad desperatum. Perfect, the epitome illustration of it. Okay, what was the appointed time, ladies and gentlemen? Well, Paul said in Acts chapter 17, standing on the Areopagus, there in this marvelous city of Athens, God has appointed a day in which he is about to judge the world in righteousness by that man whom he has appointed, whereby he has given assurance unto all men in that he raised him from the dead. Wait a minute. What did you say, Paul? God appointed a day. And by the way, he also said, in which he is about to judge the world. By the way, some major new translations are correctly rendering that as he is about to judge the world. More and more scholars are coming to recognize the imminent element of mellow in the infinitive. And these are unquestionable academic scholars. It's kind of embarrassing when men who don't have those kind of academic qualifications and credentials, and they stand up and tell these men, oh, you guys are just simply wrong. Now, should we be willing to question scholarship? If there's evidence, certainly so. I've said that for years and years and years. But should we just, because of theology, reject scholarship? And because that's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. The folks who are trying to ignore or mitigate and deny the meaning of mellow as in the infinitive as imminence, they're doing so not because of linguistics. They're doing so because of preconceived ideas of theology. Our theology should never control our exegesis. It should never control our view of linguistics. Never. Okay, got to move on. So, back to Revelation chapter 1, verse 3. God the Father told the Son, the time has arrived. Now, once again, that's in the perfect tense. The divinely appointed time, kairos. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's something absolutely critical. In Luke chapter 21 and verse 8, Jesus warned his apostles about making, or let me say, about believing premature declarations that the appointed time had arrived. You got to catch this. Luke 21 and verse 8, Jesus said, beware, many false Christs shall come, saying, I am Christ, I am he, and the time has drawn near. The appointed time, the kairos, has drawn near. Okay. So Jesus himself said, don't believe anybody who says the time has drawn near. The kairos has drawn near before its time. And what did he say? Well, here are two signs of the end. Number one sign, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world as a witness to the nations. Then comes the end. Well, later in that very generation, it was the Father who told the Son to declare to the churches, the appointed time has arrived. Look, folks, this is not John separate and apart from the Father. This is not John separate and apart from Jesus saying the time has come in violation of Luke 21 and verse 8. Because after all, here's Jesus warning John, warning Peter, do not believe or make premature declarations that the divinely appointed time had arrived. Yet here's John in Revelation recording that the Father himself told Jesus to say the divinely appointed time had arrived. We can't even accuse John of violating Luke 21 and verse 8. No. We can't even accuse Jesus of violating Luke 21 verse 8. If there is a violation, and by the way, the futurist view of Revelation violates Luke 21 and verse 8. Because Jesus was saying, don't believe, therefore don't make premature declarations that the appointed time had arrived. Don't be deceived, and don't deceive people by saying the appointed time has arrived. And yet Peter said, the appointed time for the judgment, that's Rosh Hashanah, is. You see, the force of the Greek of 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17 is the appointed time is present. That's why virtually every single English translation of the Greek of 1 Peter 4, verse 17 renders it, the appointed time for judgment has arrived. It's present. Did Peter not get the message of Luke 21 verse 8? Did John not get the message of Luke chapter 20 verse, getting ahead of myself here, of Luke 21 verse 8? Wait a minute. It wasn't John. To reiterate, it wasn't John saying the appointed time has come. He wasn't saying that and writing that on his own, nor was Jesus conveying that to John on his own. It was the Father who said, the appointed time has arrived, perfect tense. Now, folks, if those who prematurely said the appointed time has arrived, if they were to be avoided, if they were to be rejected as false teachers, then since we are supposedly 2,000 years removed from that warning, that means that it was the Father himself who made premature declarations of the nearness of the end and caused Jesus to be wrong and caused John to be wrong. And the entire message of Revelation 1:1-3 is to be categorically rejected. The Father, who knew the day and the hour, told Jesus to tell John the divinely appointed time. You know, the hour of the judgment of Babylon had arrived. Now again, Revelation 14:7, the hour of her judgment has come. That's in the aorist active indicative. But in Revelation chapter 1, verse 3, it's in the perfect tense. You literally have to pervert the text to deny that the divinely appointed time for the judgment, the fulfillment of Rosh Hashanah, had arrived in the first century 2,000 years ago. And you know what that means? That means that the Sabbaths were fulfilled 2,000 years ago. It means that the atonement, the parousia, was fulfilled 2,000 years ago. That means that the resurrection was fulfilled 2,000 years ago. Listen, folks, don't forget, please take advantage of my great 2-book special. These are the days when all things must be fulfilled and the resurrection feast fulfilled, a study of the Feast of Sukkot. If you purchase these books separately, you spend $50, $55. Special price. May 2024, U.S. orders only. Total delivered price, $39.95. You're going to save $15. All right? Listen, thank you so much for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. Don't forget to join me on Friday as we continue, and we're getting real close to the completion of our study of and review of the book, The Future of Rome. So that means I need your input. If you've got a suggestion for another book that you would like for me to review, some book that has attacked covenant eschatology, a lecture, an article that you would like for me to address that has called preterism into question, then let me know. And I'll look at the suggestions that I receive, and I'll pick the one that receives the most suggestions, okay? And that I think is the most relevant, the most pressing, the most important. All right, join me Friday morning, Friday evening. Lord willing, nothing happens. I'll be with Mike Sullivan again as we continue our incredible study of the Song of Moses. And we're continuing our study of the impact of Deuteronomy 32 on Daniel chapter 9 and the 6 constituent elements that are there. Boy, this is good stuff. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you there.